Enterprise resource planning. This is basically your company's central nervous system. It's think about it. It's kind of almost the brain of your company. Everything goes through this. So we have human resources, cost planning and control, manufacturing, financial. You can even throw in supplier relation management, e-commerce, customer relation management, business analytics, and intelligence. All these are different functions of enterprise resource planning systems. Now, SAP is an example of one, and there's different modules you can get with SAP that can do almost anything you can possibly imagine. So while ERPs are such a game-changing system for a company, there's a lot of challenges to implementing these. So they're known to be notoriously hard to implement. There's just no two words about it. There's no two ways about it. So there's usually a lot of chaos that happens when these go live. So companies tend to use two different ways of putting a system in place, an ERP system. The most common one is what's called a parallel system. So they have a old system that's running that the company's been using, and then they bring up the ERP, and the ERP is pulling information out of the old system, let's say, or the databases have been copied. And while the ERP is functional, people are trying to use it, and as with any system, there's going to be problems. But it's good that there's parallel systems because the old system is still running, and people know the old system. So by running into these problems with a new ERP system, they can be worked out. All these bugs can be resolved. And once they're resolved, then you can switch over from the old system into the new system and then move forward. So John Deere, or the Deere company, was one company that first did this. They kept their old system and started up the new system, and they essentially tried to break the new system because they knew users would be users, and people would do stupid things with the new system. So, but there's also a go live pilot. So the German company Henkel upgraded their North American system, and they wanted it to communicate with their global system. But they didn't just go fully live with the system. They did it system by system. So they might have tried it with, let's say, accounting first. Then they might have tried it with purchasing. They might have tried it with manufacturing, until they got everything going, and then they turned the entire system on. So this is a little bit of like the parallel system, but you're switching over in small chunks. That way you're not completely switching over and then having the system fail on you. You can fix errors as they happen. But there's some common mistakes that we can avoid when we're trying to implement an ERP system. The biggest one is trying to automate a bad process. And usually these processes are the ones that we've always done because that's how we do it. No one really remembers why it's done that way, but it's been always done that way, so why change it? Well, it's time to change it because it might be a bad process, and trying to make it a better process is going to get people to understand what's actually happening, and the ERP can be modified to do the new process. Another big mistake to avoid is ignoring your end users, the people who are going to be using this system. So you're going to need to do some change management. Keep these people in the loop of what's going on. Let them feel like they're being heard about this new system. Because if you don't, they're not going to want to use the new system. They're going to reject it. And you don't want that. You want them to get on board with the new system. You don't want to bring them to the new system kicking and screaming. You want them to come leading everybody else to the new system. Cutting corners. This is another one that is just shows low quality. Do things right the first time. Because if you do it right the first time, you're not going to have to do it again. But cutting corners because you want to get out on it and it's a Friday, or it's almost 5 o'clock and I want to go home, and so I'm just going to get this done real quick and we'll deal with it later. No, do it right the first time. If that means you got to do it tomorrow, do it tomorrow. It means you got to stay late, stay late. If that means you need to ask for help, ask for help. And another one is forgetting people. You have to keep your stakeholders in mind, keep your customers in mind, your suppliers in mind, because this is an enterprise resource planning system. Enterprise meaning the entire company. So you have to think of everybody. Who's going to be affected by this? One mistake I heard was they switched over an ERP system and they tied in door locks into the system, and no one could get into the building. And no one realized that because they switched over, a database didn't convert correctly, so everybody's key card to get into the building didn't work. They had to wait for somebody who had a physical key to open the door. So be careful with ERP systems and don't forget people. Because when you forget people, you're forgetting something. You can consider it cutting corners, ignoring end users. It could be all sorts of different things that could negatively affect your people. And ultimately, you want them to accept the system. So you have to make sure that they are willing to accept it. So keep them in the loop. Don't ignore them. Don't forget them. So next, let's talk about scheduling. So an ERP system can help us with scheduling, but let's look at scheduling for our manufacturing, planning, and control.